And let's kick off this discussion because I know that we've got 45 minutes. We're going to spend about 35 of those going through some rapid fire questions. And then we're going to open up to your questions from the audience. So please be sure, as I said, direct your questions to a specific panelist and we'll get through as many as we can. Okay, so let's start off with a question for all of you. And obviously, given time, be as succinct as you possibly can. And I want to understand, how is the marketing team structured at your respective companies and how do digital and brand teams actually work together? Let's start with Megan.
Yeah, sure. My team is comprised of content, design, comms, and funnel optimization, and then we work with an agency to manage our paid. There isn't a brand-specific team. Brand is managed by the marketing team, but it's really important for us that brand shows up across our entire organization in every interaction, whether that's P&C for our employees, our partners, our customers, our prospects, etc. So we do have a committee of stakeholders that comes together, and collectively we manage and speak about the brand on a regular basis.
Awesome. I want to take it to Whitney now, who is more of a consumer-facing brand. How do the two work together and how is it structured?
Yeah, so at Lyft, the growth marketing team and the brand marketing team all report into marketing, which is a relatively new change. So it only took place as about 5 months ago. And it's been a much needed and great change. I'd say before that, there was more inconsistency, not as much communication between the two teams. Previously, growth marketing was reporting into product, so there wasn't really that seamless communication. And I'd say since we've made the change, we now have integrated meetings once a week. More recently with the Vancouver launch, which I had mentioned, we actually planned for that together. So we kicked off the launch with more of that like brand campaign, so the more traditional marketing. And then the growth team came in with more of an augmented acquisition campaign. So it worked really seamlessly.
Fantastic. Thanks, Whitney. Let's go to Michael. Michael, how's your business structure?
Sure. So, MasterCard is a large organization. Traditionally, especially for the core business, there's a global marketing team, and there are regional marketing teams within the individual global regions. And generally, enablement and standard setting and brand building and architecture happen at the global level at the headquarters space, and then those campaigns are actually executed locally. In strategic growth, which is the team I sit on, we're a little more end-to-end because we're a smaller team. Strategic growth essentially means startup within a large corporation. So we do everything from event execution to campaign launches to sales enablement and brand architecture as well. But we work very closely with our brand teams and with the digital platform management teams. So whenever we're launching a new campaign, we're checking with those teams. We have weekly or bi-weekly calls, and we try to make sure we're meeting all best practices and guidelines set by those teams to launch what we need to launch.
Good to hear. And Juliet, how does it work at Truva? Obviously, knowing that you guys are relatively new.
We are, and also because we're a consumer digital pure play, we really start from a different place than some of the other brands here. The people who have marketing elements in their roles can actually be found in 3 different teams. Our performance marketeers report into our growth team. Our data and merchandising guys are surprisingly enough in their data teams. And then within brand marketing itself, we've got senior brand manager, PR comms, content managers, which is a fundamental role for us, social teams, graphics, and they're all within that particular group. But I just want to stress that there is nothing that happens at Truva that happens in a silo. So, similar to what Whitney, I think, was talking about, we do not succeed as a business unless we're integrated and supportive of each other's projects and each other's KPIs. Our senior content manager, for instance, spends a lot of time sitting with product because inspiration and discovery is really, really fundamental to what we do in terms of our brand marketing story. And we want to make sure that it's front and center on the site. On other channels where we have perhaps organic and digital spend activity, we plan and coordinate those initiatives together. So making sure that we have that coherent brand story is completely fundamental to how every single channel operates, and we make sure that we iterate as a team. Literally, I would say, 24 hours a day. It's part of our DNA.
And Judy, being a brand marketer at heart, as you say, the practice of growth marketing, as it's evolved over time and over the last few years, have you become a lot more effective as a brand marketer thanks to growth marketing efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, we talk a little bit about the sort of the difference in terms of, there are some businesses out there. So, for instance, Adidas, I think, was on the record, and we were talking about this a little while ago about how they maybe had misfired a little bit and emphasized, their performance marketing a little bit more than brand marketing, and had to sort of go back and work on that together. I think there's a huge debate right now in terms of how you actually manage the KPIs in a business and what's relevant and not, and how you actually measure long-form storytelling. But in anything that we do, we make sure that we've got brand initiatives and performance marketing initiatives together. And I think that informs both the Chief Growth Officer and the CMO roles. There's no time that we're not including and thinking about both of those within a conversation or within an activity or initiative.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great setup, actually. The Adidas case you just called out, there was one that came to mind when we were looking at this topic, and it's one that's so relevant because they overemphasized their spend and their focus on performance marketing and demand generation tactics. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts, Whitney, on that in terms of how it might have. How you guys might look to your competition as an example, like Uber, and start to pivot your strategy according to what you're seeing they do.
Yeah, obviously we have a really strong competitor in Uber, and we definitely monitor what they do. But I think at the end of the day, we are really driven by our mission and our values. So Lyft's mission is to provide or to improve people's lives with the world's best transportation. And so when you think about that, the total addressable market goes much beyond rideshare. So bikes, scooters, transit, and so on. So we really use that to inform our strategy more than relying on our competitors. But to go back to, like the whole kind of issue that Adidas had with over-indexing on performance marketing, I think that's a tension that we struggle with all of the time, where it's so easy. We went public last year, and now that, we have to perform for shareholders, it's really easy to say, with this incentive, we can show this type of ROI or this type of CPA. And with brand marketing, it's much more difficult. You can do MMMs and brand health trackers, but often it's harder to attribute those types of things back to brand marketing. So it's been, a struggle just getting like the CFO and the executive team members to understand that an investment in brand is exactly that. It's an investment. You have to think of it more long-term and not give in to those shorter-term pressures.
That's great. Really fascinating in terms of short-term growth versus long-term brand strength in the marketplace, and finding that nuance and that balance. I'm going to shift to Megan and Michael in terms of brand performance metrics that you use specifically at MasterCard and at Unbounce. What are the metrics you guys are using? And we'll get onto some specific runnels from that question. Let's go with Michael. You're on mute, bud.
Thank you. That's twice. 3 times you can kick me off. As we all do, brand performance is one of the harder things to measure. It's always a little fuzzy, and there's no one KPI that is the perfect solution. But there are a number of KPIs that act as signals. So we look at sentiment analysis. We do look at share of voice. We look very closely at engagement, and of course, engagement varies quite a bit from channel to channel. For example, in LinkedIn, engagement can be any one of 6 or 7 or 8 different signals. If somebody likes or shares something or just reads more, those are all indicators of some level of engagement. But then you hope that as someone progresses down the funnel from sort of a mindset of discovery to a mindset of learning to consideration, that you would see new engagement signals, including a visit to a website or the completion of a form or following you in a social media platform or signing up for email updates. And we try to measure that progress at each stage to understand, what channels are doing well, what messages and value prop arguments are succeeding and progressing someone through that funnel. a brand lift study is great to do, but as we all know, that takes a long time and a lot of money, and you really very often need more immediate feedback. So it's often a combination of sort of short-term signals and longer-term, like higher level brand lift studies.
Yeah, awesome. And so, Megan?
Yeah, for us, the brand is really pervasive across our whole org and all of the experiences that we're putting out into the world. So beyond just like our ad campaigns and how they're performing, we're also measuring things like NPS. Our customer experience is a brand differentiator for us. So NPS shows up as one of our corporate objectives and metrics that the senior leadership team looks at on a regular basis. And our entire CS organization is measured on their NPS scores versus ticket volume and velocity, etc. So that's a huge piece that we're looking at. In other ways, it shows up for our own employees and how the values are showing up. We see that in like our staff engagement surveys. And then on the campaign side of things, like we're really looking on an initiative to initiative basis. So, for example, with CTA Conf, our annual digital marketing conference in Vancouver, that's a really awesome opportunity where we can really bring the brand to life and interact with it and interact with our customers. But we don't really have revenue goals based off of that. We're really looking for qualitative feedback and surveys on the attendee experience, on the speaker experience, and on the experience that we're providing our employees.
That's awesome. And it's also, I'd like to understand the metrics you're focused on when looking at performance marketing efforts. How does that differ in terms of just some specifics that people might be interested in? Obviously, you've got net promoter score and some of the longer term metrics that are important to the brand. But down at a performance marketing level, Michael, what are some of the metrics you're using there?
I feel like we all use the same metrics for a lot of performance marketing guidance. I mean, here again, there's no one metric you can use. You kind of have to look at the sort of from beginning to end metrics, such as conversion or cost per conversion, CPA, but then to understand how the different components of a journey are performing, you do have to look at the individual metrics. If you're talking about an email campaign, there's your open rate, your click-through rate, and then your form completion rate, whatever that might be. It depends on the campaign. So it varies greatly from campaign to campaign, and really it all comes down to the objective of the campaign.
Yeah, totally. And I want to just ask a question around comparing top of the funnel audience segmentation with bottom of the funnel conversions, because obviously brand marketers are looking very broadly at their different audiences, and then the performance marketers and the growth marketers are very much in the weeds at the bottom of the funnel in terms of the conversion and looking at those different audiences. How do you assess the two, and how do you bring the two together when looking at the relationships between the audience that you've intended to target and the audience you end up converting, and perhaps what impact that has on perhaps whether or not you're discovering new targets and audiences, and whether or not that you are successful in where you wanted to hit the mark?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, what's interesting about brand marketing campaigns is they have not only an impact. So again, I come from the B2B marketing space, so we're very interested in how our messages are hitting the media, the general industry, influencers. Those are not all necessarily buyers. So looking at conversions down funnel is certainly important, but looking at media mentions that result from a given communication is also important. So when we run a brand campaign, we understand that the halo created from that is also assisting our demand gen and conversion campaigns, but it's also driving just general brand favorability and general media presence and share of voice. So I think I walked around your question a little bit, but we don't just look at the performance metrics to judge a brand marketing campaign, but it certainly informs.
Yeah, that's the key. And I guess Whitney, being a consumer-facing brand, have you found at any time where you've had an intent with your brand marketing campaign and you've looked at the metrics and the results, should I say, of a performance marketing or a growth initiative where you've actually identified perhaps a new market or a different market that you might have intended to target?
Well, definitely. Sorry, go ahead. We're going to ask somebody else.
Hey, Whitney, from a lift standpoint, yeah.
Please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes, definitely. I think, like I mentioned, now we work much closer with our performance marketing team. So now when we're segmenting audiences from like top of funnel to bottom of funnel, we'll realize, I hate to use this word, but synergies or potential audiences that one team was targeting that works for another. So even when we're trying to acquire new drivers, we'll form those audiences and then retarget them with some of our brand marketing.
That's awesome. Yeah, sorry, Michael, you wanted to add something there?
No, that's okay.
Okay, cool. And any other comments from the others before I move on to the next question? Cool. I guess also important in this environment and situation that we're all sitting in, thinking about the impact that COVID's having on businesses, how are you adjusting your marketing efforts to basically shift focus or adapt to the current environment? I guess this is a question to everyone, and we'll have the chance for everyone to share their thoughts on what they're doing to make the change that's needed. Juliet, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that most marketeers in this situation have been ripping their budgets up and thinking about what they're going to do, in the short, medium, and long term, because it's making us challenge and think about everything in a different way. Certainly, we've been involved in that as well, and I can't exactly comment specifics, but what I can talk about a little bit, I think, is from a brand marketing side. We're using our own search and sales data as well as Google data to really make sure that we're as reactive as possible. So in the first week of the crisis in the UK, we ripped our homepage up 3 times. We changed our navigation to surface the products and the edits that people were really going for. We put new edits in, like a Google Hangouts edit, because everyone's thinking about what they're putting on their walls behind them to sort of how much of yourself and how much of your life do you want to show off, and how much professionalism do you want to show off. We've seen a lot of people looking at stuff like that. We had puzzles take off when the schools closed down. Sumac, which is a beautiful Middle Eastern herb, is suddenly taken off this week. We don't know why. There are some chefs in the UK that are starting to talk about that stuff. So as that has happened, we've ripped up and we've changed our nav and changed our homepage. We've also pivoted our broadcast emails. We've pivoted all of our social content. And also we've really focused on that piece that I was talking about before, which is the shop local, and just helping those boutiques. So almost sort of taking our B2B messaging and actually surfacing it to our consumer audience in a more effective or more compelling way than we have in the past, which is every time that you make a decision to purchase from a local shop, you're helping them continue their business. So all of the messaging has pivoted. I think the piece that has helped us really maintain our brand integrity is something that Megan was talking about, which is just making sure that our brand story and our brand briefs are very, very clear, so that when we do pivot, we've been able to pivot quickly. Pinterest and Instagram, huge for us, and we've moved from, on broadcast email and some of our other channels having maybe a 2-week buffer, we're making decisions and getting stuff online within an hour. So it's about speed, efficiency, thinking smart, but also really anchoring ourselves in what are our values, so that when we do it smart instead of, waffling around a little bit.
And Whitney, I'd love to just bring it to you here for a second, because of being part of a much bigger brand that essentially might have more marketing spend. I'd love you to bring some of that color into the answer too, in terms of how that's been impacted. Are you doubling down? Are you pulling back? Are you being conservative? What's the angle there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the approach is evolving every day. Things are moving super quickly. I think the initial approach, so Vancouver's another great example. We launched on January 24th when, we obviously didn't know that this was going to become such a major world issue. And we had a ton of spend in market across all traditional sort of media channels. And then as soon as this started to happen, we had to think about what's the right thing to do right now. And it was really to refocus our resources. So we pulled down essentially all of our digital and social media because the message just didn't feel right, like telling people to go outside and explore the city. So we've actually donated all of our out-of-home boards to local public health agencies. And then we've really refocused all of our efforts on communicating to drivers and riders about how we can help them, and then refocused our resources, so most of our money, to social impact. So giving to our lift up partners, we call them, so shelters and relief rides for people like the essential workers that still do need to get around.
That's amazing. Well, thank you guys for doing that and making that decision, because really you do read so many articles where they say doing the right thing and helping your community is the best form of marketing in this environment. So congrats there. Megan, what are your thoughts in terms of the impact it's having?
Yeah, I agree with what Whitney was saying as well, and just like really thinking about, what is the best message that we can be putting out to the market, being sensitive and empathetic to the situation right now, and not just like blasting out all of the things that we had planned. So we put a pause on all of our campaigns and promotional messages going through email and social and paid, just to reassess how we can really help our customers and community best right now. And is that what we were going to send originally, or is it something else? It's probably not what we had planned originally without that knowledge. So it's really important just to pause and take some time to take a look at what are the things that we're really best suited to help the market with right now, and also not to overstep. I think a lot of companies are just in this race to like hit your inbox or like dominate the COVID landscape. And you need to be a little bit careful in what material you're actually putting out there, and are you the right person to be sharing that message or advocating for that, or are you just creating more clutter? I think a lot of people have probably experienced that in their inbox right now, where they're just getting like message after message of COVID. So it's really important, when you're thinking about your brand and you're thinking about how you want to show up, to be strategic in what you decide to put out right now.
Awesome. And yourself, Michael?
Yeah, I won't repeat anything that's been said. I agree. I mean, empathy is really the key word with everything you do. In our case, so within strategic growth, a few examples of what makes that up. There is City Possible, which is a model for urban innovation. This is a team that engages directly with city leaders to help them address challenges they face and launch solutions to address those challenges. And the Government Center of Excellence, where our team is actually engaging with national leaders to help them address their challenges. And there's several other business units that are along the same lines. If you can imagine that these teams are busier now than they've ever been. So in the example of City Possible, we've really been building that brand over the last couple of years to build the credibility, position it to be a really central point of urban innovation. And what's great to see at a time like this, be it a difficult time, it has really succeeded in that we are getting an incredible volume of inbound requests for help, for guidance. Some of you may have seen an announcement by several cities launched LA Love. It's a campaign to distribute and crowdsource funds to help those in need. And then to actually disperse those funds, MasterCard and City Possible and the Government Center of Excellence, we were all able to guide them through that and launch that within 8 days. That's now, we're getting lots of questions from countries and cities looking to do the same. So for us, agreed, we've pulled back probably on just straight up acquisition spend, but now it's really about providing the resources. It's all about doubling down for us on supporting clients, prospects, customers through the challenges they face. And that all comes through enablement activity in the forms of guides, stories, consultations, etc. We're really trying to make it easy for our regional teams to run with and help co-develop and collaborate with the cities that need our help.
That's amazing. Thanks for the amazing answers, guys. That's really insightful, especially the different sectors you guys are working in. Knowing that we are soon going to be moving to our rapid fire round of questions with the audience, I do have a question around what campaign all of you might have seen recently that made you stop in your tracks or stop scrolling because we're at home, we're on our devices, and what made it so compelling. Can you guys think of any examples that you might like to celebrate? Who would like to go?
I can jump in.
Go for it, Lee.
I think one, and it relates back to COVID-19, is Nike. I'm a big Nike fan, but their Play Inside, Play for the World campaign. I think every week they're sort of creating more content, but it feels really authentic and they're backing it up with action. So not only are they donating to relief efforts, but I read yesterday that they're actually using their innovation lab and their product marketing team to now create PPE out of sneaker materials, which to me has been, really inspiring.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll share.
Go for Mike.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. I'll share. I was hit with a demand gen campaign one day after finding out that one of our major events was canceled for digital virtual event software. It was very well timed. It hit me right when I was at my most pained mental state. And it spoke to me almost immediately as being an alternative to a major channel that we consider to be very important. So I thought that was well done and well executed. I actually don't recall the name of the company that sent it to me, so it somehow completely convert, but I did download the white paper and I actually shared it with some team members, so kudos to them.
They got a conversion, yeah.
That's right.
Brilliant. And you?
So I've got an example which is more about a powerful creative, which is, and I've put it on my Instagram, so if anyone wants to see it, they can go, and I'm sure you guys will surface it in some communication that you do as well. There's an ad agency called Joint London that we're thinking very much about the whole COVID issue, and the government medical service here is called the National Health Service. And the logo is very simple. It's bright blue, NHS, and they literally on the Instagram just flip it upside down so that it's, instead of saying the National Health Service, it says stay home now. And I just thought it's super quick, it's effective, it's really strong, it's really powerful, and it absolutely stopped me.
Yeah,
so,
that's a great example.
So that was my pick for the day.
Thanks, Judy. Megan, and you?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite ones that I have seen recently is the Netflix spoilers. I just thought that was incredibly clever. So for anyone who's not familiar, I think a lot of people are. Netflix started putting billboards all over like really famous high traffic areas with spoilers to the latest shows. And in the areas leading into those areas, they would have billboards announcing that if you're outside and you're going to these really public spaces, we're going to wreck it for you. Like just go home and watch all these amazing shows and find out for yourself. You know, so one of the billboards would be like, this main character dies and then comes back to life. And I just thought that was immensely clever to get the message across that you shouldn't be there.
Yeah. And Whitney, just to your point on Nike, we just confirmed today that they are going to be a panelist on our upcoming Future Retail panel at the end of this month. So that's going to be interesting to unpack how they're becoming COVID structured for success at the outset. I'd like to move into some growth marketing tactics you've currently been experimenting with, and what tactic might not have worked for your business and what might have worked for your business. I think I'm going to go to Whitney for this one, and Michael. Whitney, let's start with you. What have you guys been playing around with from a growth marketing standpoint?
Yeah, so we test and learn a lot. One thing I love about the company. So a lot of different incentives, referrals. You can imagine, for those of you who use ride sharing, different types of coupons, whether it's dollar off or percentage off. So we are constantly testing and learning on these. One thing we just recently did for Vancouver was, try incentives with people in other markets that we know are in close correlation. So Seattle or even someone coming from Toronto. I'm trying to think of what has worked and hasn't worked. Honestly, like within each one, we're sort of constantly learning. There's some parts of it that work and other ones that we're like, okay, didn't really work this time. Learn and move on.
Trial and error, yeah. Michael, any thoughts? What do you guys?
Yeah, again, this is coming from the B2B space, but I still am a big fan of LinkedIn. When you have a really, some of our business units are more niche than others within strategic growth. So being able to target by title, by industry, by name, by location, it's just it's extremely useful. So we've been playing with some of the different ad formats that they've been rolling out. They're getting into sequential narrative storytelling with some of the stuff they're doing. I don't know if that's live yet, but we're excited for it. We still struggle with things like programmatic marketing, honestly. I mean, that's been around for a long time, but we still find that that's difficult for us to make work. We find that the additional hyper-targeting tactics that are allowed to us by LinkedIn and some other platforms work best.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Okay, so hold on to your seats, panelists. We've got a ton of amazing questions in the background here, and we've got 15 minutes, and we're going to have some fun now. So let's go to a question here from Claire, directed to Juliet. What are your thoughts on promotion and brand or content marketing during this time, especially for travel companies? but also in general? Do you think it is a good or appropriate time to continue and work on growth?
Such a good question. I think travel is not my industry, my sector. If I was in that sector, I would probably be thinking carefully about the kind of messaging that I was going to put out. I think from a content marketing point of view, what we've been very, very mindful of is communicating messages that are going to tap into our brand story, but are also going to reflect what's going on right now. So as a very, very micro example, we did a new email the other day, and instead of just, talking about all the exciting new product, our secondary line was very much about how you might connect with that in your new environment, or, in the fact that we are all sort of seeking sanctuary right now. So I think as long as you have the messaging right, I think that there still is a curiosity, at least in my sector in e-commerce, there is a curiosity and there's a need, and people are still thinking about buying. It's just about making sure that you get the tone right and you manage that really carefully.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks, Juliet. Okay, Whitney, from Alex. I'm going to focus on you specifically, or if anyone has thoughts to build upon this, please do. Are you continuing to do paid marketing? And if so, how much on a percentage basis has your paid marketing changed? Mostly direct response focused or brand marketing focused? And what channels are you prioritizing?
Yeah, so I alluded to this a little bit before. And so we put a pause on paid marketing right off the bat. When everything, kind of started getting more serious, our VP of brand made that decision, and I think everyone agreed with her. We just needed to pause, reassess what our message was out there. I would say this week we've started relooking at knowing that we need to get some education out there to our driver community and our rider community about one, what we're doing, and two, how we can help them. We've decided to start putting a bit more behind paid marketing. So in terms of channels, mainly digital, social, and then we're also revamping our .com site, similar to something I think Juliet had mentioned earlier too.
That's awesome. Great advice. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go to Megan for this one from Roger. Let's talk about how you justify brand spend to executives, your executive counterpart, should I say, based on general awareness or education or specific metrics that you might bring to life. Obviously, there's a lot of lobbying that has to go into making sure you're able to justify your spend.
Yeah, actually, I'm really fortunate at Unbounce. They're huge brand advocates. So generally, there's a lot of encouragement for us to be looking at ways to put the brand out there right from day one. That's been really important to the founders. But I think, when you're looking at your funnel and how you're moving people through and the different conversions, if you can properly speak to how you're driving ROI throughout the whole funnel, and then the brand becomes a component of that very, very top of that funnel, I think that tells a really clear story of where you're going when you're speaking to impressions and reach and engagement, and then being able to track and see that move through down to purchase. I think that's still very powerful, even though it's a signal more than a direct association. And then from the paid side, when we're looking at branded ads, for example, we're really looking at that U-shaped multi-touch attribution, so that we can still show all of the different things that we're helping along the journey, even if they weren't direct to purchase contact.
That's awesome. Thanks, Megan. From Braze to Michael. What are the KPI metrics for performance marketing to revenue? How are the dynamics between sales and marketing teams managed? I guess you work very closely with your sales teams, yeah.
We do. I speak with the business team almost every day. To be honest, in our, again, B2B side of the business, and especially with strategic growth, we work a lot with the public sector. Sales cycles are very long. If you've ever worked with the public sector before or government before, it's one of the longest sales cycles I've ever seen in my entire career. So we, of course, in an ideal world, you'd want to attribute revenue to campaigns and to content that you've produced and to the channels that you've participated in. But the reality is, by the time revenue is driven in this world, in the world that we're playing in right now, it's very difficult to have that level of attribution. So we more look at, it's less of a revenue attribution discipline. It's more of an engagement, honestly, performance discipline that we get engaged in. If I'm running a lead generation campaign, then I'm looking at qualified leads. Once leads come in, we're actually manually going through. We're looking at, from an individual to an individual basis, which of these leads are actually qualified, etc. So I would say SQLs and MQLs kind of standard practice. That's how we're doing it in this world.
Perfect. Thanks, Michael. Coming to you, Juliet, from NUA, can you give examples of how you've pivoted your social content? I guess you alluded to some of it just now, but you could also talk about it in general, because, as you say, market preferences change pretty quickly, especially in the interior decorating space.
They do indeed. And so at the heart of what we're doing is we're looking at performance, and we're looking at what's working and not what's resonating. And as soon as we see an uptick in one particular area, we will explore it. So we'll have a strategy that sort of does a little bit of a testing to see if it's going to work. So I guess just going back to sort of the COVID situation, from a zeitgeist point of view, the importance of home, the importance of family, connections, friendship, nurturing, all speak to some of the space that Trouva occupies. So we were in a very lucky position in that we could really, really start to almost deepen our storytelling into that area. So one of the things that we did, as I explained briefly before, is we started to tell our boutique owner stories about people who really care about what they do, are passionate and inspired by what they do, who are having a tough time, and we want to try and support them as much as possible. That became one content stream. The next content stream was about, well, how do you take that product and how do you bring it into your home? I think that one of the things that we've really noticed is that regardless of what's going on in the outside world, that people are really still looking for inspiration and they're looking for joy. And so what we've done over the past couple of days is we've started to deepen into that. So in the same way that Whitney was saying, look, they've been looking really, really hard at sort of what the signals are from their audience. We've been using the signals from our customers to be able to react to that. From a Pinterest point of view, it has been very, very much about looking at what's going on from a search point of view, and then just really backing into that as quickly as we can and getting that stuff up as quickly as possible. So it is absolutely about speed. You cannot do that unless you have a really strong brand story that everyone in the team understands, so that when you do decide to pivot, everyone goes in the same direction at the same time.
Yeah, and Juliet, being a newcomer in the market there, are you finding success with your potential customers? Are they having the aha moments in terms of your positioning thanks to your agile marketing approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've always had those two elements of the brand that I was talking about. It's just that we've rebalanced it a little bit, and I think that we know that people really appreciate the fact that we are supporting our independence as much as we possibly can. So that is definitely coming back to us in terms of brand love.
That's great. Congratulations. Whitney, here's a question. I think as an esteemed marketer, what would you recommend as the marketing strategy for a startup? Because we're talking about big brand marketing, and we're also talking about performance marketing and growth marketing tactics. And often startups don't have the cash needed to be able to go and win ahead of the competition thanks to a lack of investment into some of the performance marketing tactics. I'm sure there are a lot of startups listening in today that would love some advice on what a marketer would recommend.
Yeah, and I would say when I started at Lyft in Toronto, it felt very much a startup, even though it's very established in the US. Toronto was our first market in Canada. So how I sort of approached it was, we didn't have huge budgets, so I had to be scrappy and really thought through, one, like, how do you just first build that brand awareness and create that emotional connection? Because you really need that before you can get more into the performance marketing. So specifically in Toronto, I tried to think through, like, who do we need to partner with to tell our story? What types of community initiatives can we use? And I took the approach of, we need to be a community partner first, so we can tell that story and then sort of amplify that down the road. So started small, and then we quickly grew.
And then I guess to the point I made earlier, one hand washes the other. As you start to tweak your performance marketing efforts, and you start to learn what words work, what activity works in the growth marketing space, you then get a higher ROI, which you can then invest into your brand and gain broader reach and broader emotional connection.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Question for Megan. Do you think there are fundamental differences between B2B brand marketing versus B2C? If so, what do you think these differences are? Can you give an example of what a brand campaign can look like for you?
Yeah, sure. I think there's a lot of difference. Actually, when you're asking about interesting campaigns that we've come across, I was trying to think of like a really awesome B2B example where there's just like a branded campaign. And it's really hard to find that. I find like a lot of B2B marketing is very central around product value and the offering and how it's going to serve the business, and less about an emotional connection, which is a little bit unfortunate, actually. From a B2B perspective, I think for our campaigns, like we're really looking at how we can show up both from an awareness perspective and really be helpful to our audiences. So sometimes that's still, it's still related to our space and to our product, but in how can we, help them grow? How can we help empower them to be better online marketers? And that's kind of the angle that we're able to take in that emotional sentiment. But yeah, I would love to see more B2B companies looking at brand advertising and brand campaigns in more of a B2C lens. And I think as we continue in the digital space and there's more and more startups and more and more people targeting, the everyday person who is the end consumer in small business, that we will start to see more patterns like that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Megan. Another interesting question here from Christopher was, what impact do you think COVID has had on potential future marketing strategies, maybe tone of voice? How have you guys been thinking about the impact coming out of COVID on your marketing efforts? I guess we can go to Juliet in terms of what you guys might have been talking about at Truvo with your team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've talked a little bit already about the changes that we've made. People will come out of it. People will have different interests. People will have a little bit more energy, and they'll have a little bit more confidence. And of course, we will reflect that as that occurs. But I think that there are some fundamental changes in terms of tone of voice that we will probably follow. And I think that, again, those words that I've been using, such as sanctuary, or the importance of home, or the ability to talk with a little bit more emotion, are things that I don't think that we will walk away from too quickly.
Yeah. Anyone want to build upon that in terms of how you guys are talking about perhaps change of tack?
Yeah, sure. I think people will appreciate the things that they've not been able to experience for such a long period of time. Time with family, time with friends, the ability to freely exit your home and experience entertainment. I think there's going to be a hunger for some of those things that we've never seen before, a hunger for social interaction that we've never seen before, and a true appreciation for it. It's so easy to forget about what's really important in life until something like this prevents you from being able to do those things. So I can see, just like Julia was saying, appreciating just those human connections like never before, and marketing messages along those lines, especially when you are selling something along those lines. Those are just new opportunities, I think, that will really, really hit us hard when we get through some of these crises.
That's a great point in terms of the community impact this is having, and how people have reframed some important things in their lives and reprioritized, I guess, which is good. I guess that also talks to social media marketing and influencer marketing, I guess, too. They've had to really tone down their efforts from a kind of a bragging standpoint. People have to appreciate the difficulties a lot of people are going through and focus on more authentic messages that actually will resonate for the longer period. I wanted to ask you a question about, given the fact that we're talking about very much data-informed marketing efforts quite a lot of the time with growth marketing, Do any of you guys have expertise in data analytics, or is that something that you're interested in, or would you find it something that you should be embarking upon to improve your skill as a marketer? I guess let's go to Whitney.
I feel like Lyft is a transportation company, but at the end of the day, it's really a data company. And so we have a dedicated analytics marketing team, but we work very closely together. So on every campaign, every project, every partnership, we sit, next to each other and go through all of the data and the insights. And it helps me to become a stronger marketer and also helps me to inform insights for future campaigns. So it's very much integrated into our process.
Awesome. Anyone else want to add to that as an add-on in terms of the power of data to be a better marketer?
Yeah, sure. I can speak a little bit to that too. I don't personally feel that I am super competent on the data side, but our team, we've got a whole data team at Unbounce. We have data scientists at Unbounce. We have a revenue operations group that is constantly analyzing and looking at all of our analytics. So we work really closely with those groups. And then obviously we do have growth marketers within the marketing team, and we're constantly assessing, how people are converting through the funnel, how our tests are performing, what signals and indicators can inform future tests. So I think the power of data is incredibly important to influence your roadmap and how you're thinking, and just help validate, some of the things that maybe you have a gut feel on, and you'd be surprised how often you're wrong until you look at the data, and you could have gone down this really long journey. But if you have that knowledge, you can save yourself.